The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome. Once again, my name is Michael Kane. I am the Director of Advocacy here at Children's Health Defense, and we have breaking news that just broke last night. Congress writes a letter urging the Department of Justice to protect religious exemptions in the 4 states that have basically made it a crime for children to have religious beliefs if it relates to vaccines. We also are going to have a science update, doctors and scientists with Brian Hooker, as well as Tommey, after we go through this breaking news with the amazing attorney, civil rights attorney, Sujata Gibson. So the defender broke this last night first at 6 p.m. Breaking: Congress members urged the Department of Justice to investigate 4 states that prohibit religious exemptions to vaccination. This effort was led by Congressman Greg Steube out of Florida. Congressman Steube has also sponsored the GRACE Act, which is legislation that has the same goal to get religious exemptions accessible to all parents, to all children throughout this nation. A dozen other representatives joined Representative Steube on the letter. Let's get a shot of the letter there. And was sent to the Honorable Attorney General Pam Bondi, as well as Harmeet Dillon, who heads the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. They go into a number of important areas, a number of case law, Mahmoud v. Taylor, how that has impacted Miller v. McDonald. But then they go into 2 children's health defense lawsuits. And here are the signatures of the 13 members of Congress who have signed on to this letter. Oh, and as we scroll through and go down to the bottom, you will see CC'd on this is Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as well as Linda McMahon, the Secretary of the Department of Education. Washington Times also broke this news late last night, I believe around 9 p.m. Or so. I think they have a story coming out this morning as well, too. With that, I want to bring on my guest who is central to all of these issues, outside counsel for Children's Health Defense, Sujata Gibson. Sujata, thank you so much for joining me for this today.
Thanks so much for having me. This is a huge moment in our fight. It's not the end of the road, but it's a very significant development, Michael, when members of Congress formally asked the DOJ to intervene and investigate this issue. It transforms the narrative from, what I think people want it to be in some of these states, that this is just some fringe little issue that's going to go away, to the undeniable truth that this is a major civil rights issue, and it is going to have to be squarely and respectfully addressed.
And Representative Steube introduced the GRACE Act over the summer, and he's just increasing the steam in his efforts here, just showing that this wasn't just a fly-by-night issue for him. This is something that he is really and truly invested in, whether it's legislatively, whether it's going to the DOJ. It's really, really heartening to see an elected official that actually really cares about something, especially with him in Florida, where they don't really have the same issues that we have here, but he's fighting for parents and children all across the nation. So shout out to Representative Steube.
Absolutely. One of the things he said just gave me chills because it articulates everything I've been feeling, that your constitutional rights should never take a backseat to a vaccine mandate. And that's absolutely true. States do have authority over public health policy, but there is a certain floor that all citizens and all people in this country have, and that is our inalienable constitutional rights, which include bodily autonomy, religious rights, parental rights, and basic medical rights, not to take, a vaccine that your doctor has told you it could put you at risk of serious harm or death. That should be a no-brainer. And yet in these 4 states, families are routinely asked to go against medical advice, their religious beliefs, and their parental instincts on how to protect their child, just to be able to attend school or participate in basic civil rights.
So, Sujata, let's go over some of the details here. You're not only bringing up the religious exemption, but also the medical exemption. There is a lawsuit that's named in this letter, Children's Health Defense versus McDonald, in which all of the plaintiffs in this case originally had religious exemptions, but New York made that illegal. So then, because they were medically fragile, also have medical exemptions and have struggled to even get those. Why don't you talk a little bit about this relationship between the religious exemption and the medical exemption in New York and in these cases?
To some extent, it's kind of a complicated constitutional law doctrine that we could give classes on, but what it really boils down to is parental rights. And I think the Supreme Court has increasingly been explaining this in cases like Mahmoud v. Taylor, which was a watershed moment where the Supreme Court resolved a circuit split, meaning that some, states and circuits of states were saying that you don't have to enforce parental rights in schools, that somehow your fundamental right to parent your child, to make important medical decisions, decide between competing medical advice that your doctor gives versus the school district's doctor, or follow your religious beliefs, that this doesn't go away just because you enter the schoolhouse door. And that's what this fight is about. And it really should be, because there's a lot of case law that shows that this right of parents to be the one to decide what is best for their child, that is necessary to protect children. If you have a fit parent, they are the ones that are looking at what the doctors are recommending to them, deciding between competing opinions, and they've really got to be the ones with the final say.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. This letter was sent to Pam Bondi as well as Harmeet Dillon. Harmeet Dillon has been really directly over the target on all of these issues. Even before she joined the Department of Justice, she was fighting for medical freedom and religious liberty in the court systems, challenging Biden's mandate, the federal vaccine mandate that came out, successfully going to the Supreme Court with that. And Pam Bondi, as we know, not too long ago, dropped charges against Dr. Kirk Moore. Dr. Moore, here's the tweet from Pam Bondi. At my direction, the Justice Department has dismissed charges against Dr. Kirk Moore. Dr. Moore gave his patients a choice. When the federal government refused to do so, he did not deserve years in prison he was facing. It ends today. Some really good precedent that we've seen from both Pam Bondi as well as from Harmeet Dillon. Why don't you speak to this a little bit?
I really want to express sincere appreciation for Attorney General Pam Bondi and Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon. This administration has shown a level of attentiveness to these constitutional and civil rights concerns that many families have not experienced before. That responsiveness really matters. So what we're dealing with is not just this issue of medical rights in the abstract. We're dealing with real carnage in these 4 states. One of the 2 cases that was requested, suggested for intervention, is the case of Sarah Doe, who was severely injured when she was forced to take 18 vaccines over the course of a matter of weeks when New York lost its religious exemption. She's missing only the hepatitis B vaccine. And yet the school, despite that 7 doctors say that she can't safely take it, given her ongoing injuries from the previous 18 doses over such a short time, the school district wouldn't take her medical exemptions. I mean, this child went into a walk-in clinic to try to get vaccinated against medical advice. She was so desperate to go back to school. Even the walk-in clinic doctor, who had no idea of her history or anything, she didn't tell her, take one look at her anaphylactic rashes and said, you could die. I'm not going to vaccinate you.
Wow.
I mean, and the school district still didn't take it. So we're talking about serious harm to children resulting from these policies. And doctors are at the front line of that. Doctors are scared often, I mean, this is 7 doctors were recommending it, but this case shows how some of these doctors were then intimidated by the school district and the health departments. And when she came back, to get renewals of exemptions, some of them said, you can't be safely vaccinated, but you need to get the follow-up request from a different doctor because I've been, I might get in trouble. I've been scared. I've gotten a phone call.
And the letter that came from Stubbe and the other representatives spoke directly to this vaccine fraud website that they have in New York to shame doctors who haven't been charged with anything illegal, just to shame them so they don't give medical exemptions, so that they don't take care of their patients. But I want to go back to Sarah Doe for a second, because a lot of people say, well, Sarah Doe won. She did to some extent. She won a preliminary injunction. She's in school. God bless her and her family that she's back in school. The case isn't over. So in this letter, there is a request for DOJ to intervene, because if this case could go a number of ways still, people don't really realize that this case could set a precedent that could, send shockwaves across the state and the country, or it could be minimized to impact one person. Why don't you speak to the importance of the impact of this litigation, where the congressman had requested that DOJ possibly intervene in?
Yeah, these 2 cases that the members of Congress suggested as potential vehicles, and obviously, the Department of Justice is going to evaluate for themselves what they want to do and what they're able to do in these cases or others, but they're really good vehicles because they have systemic implications, and they work to address both the widespread issues with the medical exemption, but also the religious. So we're at kind of a precipice legally in both of those arenas. The law has really changed in recent years, and New York is about to interpret what that means here. So it would be very, very helpful to have the Department of Justice actively participating in that reframing of where we are now that we have cases like Mahmoud coming from the Supreme Court. And, the Supreme Court vacated Miller v. McDonald, which was a New York case brought by Syrian Glimstad and other attorneys over the religious exemption, and it had been dismissed, and the Supreme Court vacated that and said, no, apply Mahmoud. We're at a big turning point here for both the religious and medical exemptions. The Sarah Doe case set important precedent for protections on the medical. But you're right, they're not over. Just yesterday, I believe, or the day before, I got an email from the Attorney General in New York saying the New York State Department of Health wants to intervene in Sarah Doe's case and try to convince the court essentially that they should rule against her.
So I want to put context to that. Look at that, people. It's supposed to be the school system that accepts the medical exemption in New York. If a doctor says there's a medical exemption, that should be it. DOH really shouldn't play a role. That's what the law says. But here comes Letitia James. Here comes Tish James coming to a local school district saying, no, this impacts the entirety of New York State. Why do you think that is? Because Tish James is completely aware of what the implications are now in this case. And that couldn't speak any more strongly to the need for the DOJ's opinion to come into here too. Yes, Sujata.
Yeah, it's been a shell game. The school districts pass off the buck to the state passes it back to the school districts. Everyone's pretending that this is some across the board policy. It's not. It's riddled with arbitrary exemptions. Kids who turn 18 no longer have to be vaccinated, whereas their 17-year-old siblings are being kicked out if a school, changes their mind on a medical exemption, with catastrophic effects on their health and also on their educational path and future prospects. But what we're not saying the states can't still make these regulations. All we're asking is that we leave this realm where the state just gets to impose all of these extremely oppressive policies and mandates without having to justify them. So that is really all we're asking. We just want them to show why it is necessary to, force Sarah Doe to get vaccinated in violation of 7 physicians' advice, for example.
It's just insane. And thank God, God bless you for the work that you're doing, Children's Health Defense. We're just about out of time here, but I would be remiss if I did not give a huge shout out to an amazing medical freedom activist from New York to Florida, Cait Corrigan, who has just been such a force in making sure this issue is talked about in Washington, D.C. She has a great relationship with Representative Stubbe's office and has been able to make sure to keep this issue burning, keep this issue being discussed. Cait Corrigan's just doing amazing stuff. She's really and truly the future of our movement. And I know, Sujata, you've done some work with her in DC, educating people and having important meetings. Shout out to Cait Corrigan. I don't think this moment happens without her.
And I just want to stress, and I'm sure Cait would agree with me, look, this really is a wonderful moment for families and activists like Cait, who are so diligently bringing these issues to the attention of Congress. But at the end of the day, I'm just so thankful to Congressman Stubbe and all of the members of Congress who heard the families that are crying for help and really have decided to do something in a meaningful and active way to protect them.
Fantastic. Sujata, we are out of time. I'm sure we're going to have you on again soon to talk about this. This seems to be like a fast developing issue now. Thank God. All praise to the Most High. Thank you so much, Sujata, for being on here and for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much. Take care.
So everybody out there, stay tuned. More is going to come. There's going to be call to actions. There's going to be things for you to do. There's going to be court hearings soon in the months ahead in some of these cases that CHD is backing. So please stay tuned. Make sure people know about it. Stay here at CHD TV, childrenshealthdefense.org for all of the updates. And with that, don't go anywhere. I want to bring in now Doctors in Science with just legendary legends, Dr. Brian Hooker and Polly Tommey.
Well, good morning, CHD TV. This is your host, Dr. Brian Hooker. It is February 6th, 2026. And today I have the delight and privilege to be joined by my absolute favorite person in the world to be on CHD TV, or really, really any media with, because she's so talented and wonderful. Head producer, director of Children's Health Defense Television, CHD TV. She rocks it every day. Polly Tommey, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. I do enjoy doing this show with you. And in fact, I'm going to hijack your show because I'm going to be the one asking you questions this week.
Well, I'm really excited. I mean, this is a good time because there have been a lot of things that have come up in science and medicine. They need to be put right. And in CHD TV, you got to tune in. I mean, because things are put right all the time. You know, the content here is absolutely amazing. And, the things that we get to do on a regular basis because of CHD TV, I can't believe that I get to have my own show. It's almost 3 years. I think I've been doing this for like 3 years. And I remember when I first started, like, oh my goodness, this is gonna suck. And it's really, really addictive. You did not warn me, Polly.
It is addictive. And also, just to say to everyone out there, if you can follow us on X at CHD TV Live, because we've just had to set up our own channel and we need you to be following us. That's where all the clips are going to be going now. So get over to CHD TV Live on X. Right, let's get the first headline up. Gavi or Gavi, whichever way you want to call it. It's the Vaccine Alliance. I'm going to read it out and you're going to then say what you think about this wonderful piece here. Will giving my baby multiple vaccines at once overload their immune system? And their answer, no. Decades of studies confirm that multiple vaccines don't overwhelm immunity, don't increase infection risk, and don't cause chronic illness. Research shows that a baby's immune system can handle multiple vaccines at once. The concern about overload comes from a misunderstanding of how immunity works. For example, mild post-vaccination side effects like fever are actually signs the immune system is working properly. Not only that, delaying vaccines leaves kids unprotected and at significant risk. The vaccine schedule is designed to protect kids exactly when they need it most. What a load of BS. There's nothing else to say about that. That's terrible.
There's so much fraud in there, and it's such an affront to what the scientific method really is. What this is based on is actually, a calculation. It's not based on any type of experimental evidence or any type of evidence with humans, but it's a calculation that was done by Paul Offit. We estimate that the immune system can be bombarded by 10,000 different antigens all at the same time. Well, first of all, antigens are not vaccines. Vaccines are formaldehyde, they're aluminum, they're live viruses, they're recombinant proteins, they're polysorbate 80. They may contain other components like squalene, up until Secretary Kennedy banned it, the flu shot had mercury in it. And so, when you're looking at multiple shots, you are looking at multiple toxins that have never been tested together. So, you can rely on the back of Paul Offit's envelope, and his quote unquote expert opinion that has been lined with millions and millions of dollars when he voted himself rich on the advisory committee for immunization practices by getting his Rototec vaccine approved. We estimate that he probably made somewhere between $24 and $40 million personally just for that particular transaction. And so, consider the source. Consider that Gavi is also funded by the Gates Foundation, and Bill Gates invests in vaccines on a regular basis and makes millions, if not billions of dollars. So no, they have not been tested. They have not been tested together. The vaccine schedule has never been tested. At 2 months of age, infants are getting 6 shots. And they've never been tested together. An infant, weighing somewhere between 8 and 11 pounds at 2 months of age, too small for the aluminum, too small for the formaldehyde, the polysorbate 80. And again, when Polly, we run these tests, we do the epidemiology. We found with Louisiana state records that when children got the 6-in-1 vaccine, they were upwards to 2 times more likely to die after that vaccine than those children that were unvaccinated during the 2-month period.
Will giving my baby multiple vaccines at once overload their immune system? The quick answer is what they've said. So what's our quick answer? And I just might say, yes, also it does overload the immune system, and your baby will or could and does, babies do die. So your baby may die. End of.
That is the quick answer. It does overload the immune system. When you see a child fever, when you see a child, respond with a high-pitched scream, that is not normal. That is it's not the immune system acting properly. It's the immune system saying, why did you just put toxins in my body?
Right. And or your child may live with seizures for the rest of their lives, like poor Karen's child did, Lauren. I mean, the list goes on and on. And speak to Carrie Bondi about her baby who died following too many vaccines being put in. Just one vaccine can kill your child. Anyway, don't get me going down that. So let's talk about Japan. Nearly half of Japanese surveyed said they won't get vaccinated in a future pandemic. Among those who said they wouldn't get vaccinated in a future pandemic, a third said they did get a COVID-19 vaccine. The study by 8 University of Tokyo researchers was published last week on the Med something preprint server. The researchers said they wanted to shed light on the factors contributing to vaccine hesitancy. Well, people are not stupid, are they?
No, they're not. One of the best commercials for not getting vaccinated was the COVID-19 shot. And what we saw when we were tracking vaccine adverse events was something that was cataclysmic, and it far eclipsed the 30-year history of all the vaccine injuries for all the vaccines prior to the rollout of the COVID shot. That was eclipsed within 18 months of the COVID shot. So there were more injuries in 18 months for a single vaccine from the rest of the combined history of when vaccine injuries were actually tracked going back to the 1990s. So no wonder people who get their COVID shots, they're not stupid. Like you said, they're not going to go back to that same well if the well is poisoned.
Let's talk about measles, because measles is on the move. What the CDC data shows about travel-linked spread, breakthrough cases, and surveillance gaps. The measles on the move I think they're talking about is South Carolina, right?
And that's in South Carolina, correct?
What do we know about it?
And what we know, I have the measles tracker from South Carolina live on my desktop, and so I'm getting live updates every day. At last count, there were 847 cases of the measles, and 95% of them are in one county called Spartanburg County. Spartanburg County is next door to Greenville County, and it's, an area that specifically the outbreak happened in Ukrainian refugees. Mostly starting at a single church congregation. And I believe that it was individuals who were traveling from the Ukraine to the United States. There's a measles outbreak in Ukraine right now. They brought that strain of measles back. And what happens is these individuals get the measles and they recover. There have only been 18 hospitalizations. There have been no deaths associated in any way, shape, or form. These individuals recover. Some of them are quarantining. Measles is highly transmissible. But again, it's a rash that can last upwards to 8 to 10 days. You have a fever. There is sensitivity to sunlight. But when you go back to the records prior to the introduction of the vaccine, the case fatality rate for measles was something like 1 in 1,000 individuals. And the population fatality rate was 1 or 2 per million individuals. And so, the fear porn that is going around about measles on the move, measles spreading, I had the measles, Polly had the measles. Really, it's something that when you have the measles and you recover from the measles, mild infection, you have lifetime immunity.
Yeah, and we actually know quite a lot of people that have had the measles, and I've been around a family that have had the measles, and it wasn't bad at all. They got a little bit of a nasty cough, but we dealt with it, and they're now climbing the walls, just back to normal, healthy, supersonic. So don't panic if you get the measles. In fact, embrace it, because quite frankly, as long as you treat it right and you're not silly, good food, let them rest because they have got the measles. And I mean, in my day, you had a week in bed. Even if you weren't ill, you had to stay in bed, which was really annoying.
I remember that. Yeah, it was annoying.
It was annoying because you didn't feel that ill at all. And you got maybe special drinks if your mum was being kind. And we used to read comics because that's what we had in our day, because we didn't have the internet and all that kind of stuff. And so really, people, just stay calm and speak to other families that have had the measles and got through it, because they're fine. Don't panic. Don't rush to hospital. Please don't do that.
No, and the thing the thing I want to interject really quickly, shame on the CDC for not talking about how measles is treated. There's not a shred of information. I believe there is something on the CDC website about vitamin A, high dose vitamin A for the measles. Once a measles is diagnosed, then you should have upwards to 200,000 units of vitamin A 2 days, just the first 2 days after you catch the infection. And in addition, we have individuals like Dr. Ben Edwards, Dr. Richard Bartlett, who have designed protocols using budesonide and albuterol for any type of breathing issues that are associated with measles. And they monitor for secondary bacterial infections, where you could use azithromycin, you could use ceftriaxone, for these particular infections. A Z-Packer, azithromycin, is a little more broad spectrum. But, these are things that people need to know. And instead, that information is being throttled over against, oh, well, shame on you. You didn't get your MMR shot.
Just so you know, people who think, oh, I'll go and get the MMR because, I don't want measles, whatever you're thinking. Think of how many deaths from the MMR. Think of how many autism cases resulting from the MMR is ridiculous. It's sky high through the roof. And
Absolutely.
also, Brian and I have met a ton of people, Brian included, that had the MMR and then got measles. So it doesn't even work.
No, it doesn't work. They talk about durable lifetime immunity. I received the MMR vaccine 3 times. Still got the measles. And so having the infection, getting the disease, it was, the way that, humans adapted to viruses over thousands, if not millions, whatever years of adaptation. It was a disease of childhood. It was an infection of childhood. And rightfully so. I mean, right now we have a situation where people have incomplete immunity to the measles, and that does not protect the most vulnerable section of the population. Pregnant women should not be getting the measles. They can get the measles. It can be fine. But this was meant to be a disease of childhood, and incomplete immunity through vaccination has really skewed things. And has created unanticipated scenarios that put people at risk. It's doing the opposite of what they claim it does.
So don't panic and don't give Tylenol. All right, let's go on to the next one. Acetaminophen used during pregnancy does not increase risk of autism, ADHD. This is a review. It's ABC News reporting this. What do you have to say about that?
This is a new review article that they've trotted out. They, being the pharmaceutical industry, have trotted out to basically lie about acetaminophen or paracetamol used during pregnancy. There is a risk of autism for paracetamol, acetaminophen use during pregnancy. Your risk of having a child diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder if you use it during pregnancy is about 75% higher than if you didn't. The risk becomes much, much worse. It becomes 600% higher, or 6 times higher, if you use if you use baby Tylenol on a neonate. On a baby, first month, first year of life, they should never see Tylenol. Never, ever, ever see Tylenol, because the risks go through the roof. And so they're looking at the wrong thing. Prenatal, there is a risk, but they're ignoring the fact in the elephant in the living room that neonatal use of Tylenol does has been linked causally with 30 lines of evidence to autism.
Also, I've got to say, Brian, I don't think I've done an interview of all the years that I've been interviewing parents. I don't think I've ever done an interview where there's an autistic child and the parents say, vaccination and autism. They've all given Tylenol. And we've always thought, this is weird in the back of our mind, Tylenol has played a huge part in because it's a circle, isn't it? Tylenol, vaccination, Tylenol, or Calpol if you're in England. But there's got to be something there in the amount of Tylenol our kids got in their first year.
There is, and I'm not saying that, oh, well, if we get rid of Tylenol, we get rid of autism, or if we get rid of vaccines or vaccine components like aluminum, we get rid of autism. There are other stressors in the environment. There are other environmental toxins that, have a similar interplay to acetaminophen, and the oxidative stress caused by vaccines. I know kids who are completely unvaccinated who regressed into autism. I've talked to families all the time, but really the perfect storm, the perfect recipe is having that vaccination, and then treating that neonate, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, 15 months, upwards to 4 years. I've heard kids 4 years. You take them home after the vaccination, you treat with Tylenol, they regress into autism.
Okay, I have a question for you, Brian, and I think this is a multi-million-dollar question that everybody wants answers, but I get it the whole time. So this weekend, I went to a particular party, and I spoke to a woman in the military. She's a fighter person, like a
Right.
proper active person in the military, and she is trying not to get vaccinated, but she has to, whatever. And her record went on and on and on with, I can't tell you how many vaccines. I mean, I just stood there looking and thinking, how are you still standing? How are you okay? I mean, this is the big question. You've just said you had 3 MMRs, yet you don't have autism. You're still, super brain, all that kind of stuff. So why does Billy get hurt by one vaccine and you had 3 and you're fine? Why is that woman in the military able to function and be as she is, yet other people die? What is going on? It's like Russian roulette with your baby. You can say,
Exactly.
I'm fine, I'm going to vaccinate my baby because I'm fine. Well, your baby may not be fine. So what's the deal here?
The vaccine schedule is one size fits all. And we know that looking at, even from a genetic standpoint, we are all very different. There's a lot of variability in how infants can detoxify different toxins. After my son was diagnosed with this disorder, he regressed into autism at 15 months of age. We ended up doing genetic panels, and we saw he can't detoxify mercury. He can't detoxify aluminum. He cannot detoxify other heavy metals. God help him with something like Tylenol. He's a poor excreter of, those particular components. So, he's different. So not every child is the same. We are not clones. We are not genetic clones. We're not epigenetic clones. We're growing up in different environments. And when my son was vaccinated, he was also receiving water that had high arsenic in it. He was wearing baby clothes that had antimony from fire retardants in it. And so you cannot look at one child surviving. I'll never forget one of Bill Thompson's first statements ever to me was, oh, well, my daughter got all the same thimerosal-containing vaccines as your son, and she's just fine. And I'm like, yeah, duh, she's different. Everybody is different. And there are individuals in society that cannot tolerate these vaccines. And honestly, Polly, the amount of individuals in society that can tolerate vaccines, now that the schedule is so bloated, becomes less and less and less, and the more and more children become susceptible.
And we don't know what the long run for that poor military woman. I mean,
No.
she, they may get cancer. Or I'm not, I mean, we don't know, do we?
We do not know. We cannot project what the trajectory of her life is. We don't know enough about molecular genetics, epigenetics, environmental factors to say she's not going to have Alzheimer's, she's not going to get cancer, she's not going to have heart disease. There are not guarantees. So why don't we avoid the toxins in the first place?
All right, let's talk about flu vaccines, shall we? FDA asks for warning on flu vaccines about febrile seizure risks in kids. The FDA's Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research last month sent notices to several vaccine makers, including Sanofi, AstraZeneca, GlaxoSmithKline, and various others, asking them to add the warning. So, wow, that's good.
Yes, a baby step, but a step in the right direction. You know what? Febrile seizures are never subclinical. They're never benign. It is not a normal state neurologically to have a seizure. And so, when you look at that, the potential for brain damage, the potential for epilepsy, the potential for neurological injury, it's all there. Okay. And so at a minimum, we should be putting warnings on these vaccines. And, and quite honestly, it's the flu shot. The Cleveland Clinic came out and said last year's flu shot actually caused the flu. You were 27% more likely to get the flu if you got the flu shot versus unvaccinated. And so why would we put ourselves in this particular situation to get something that is potentially neurotoxic that can cause a child to fever and have a seizure? Let's just not do it.
Right, but here's the problem with all of this, and that is, great, we've got warnings on the bottles or the inserts or wherever.
Right.
Like, well, the MMR has big warnings about seizures, but we, the parents, we don't see those. So it's down to our healthcare provider, doctor, whatever you want to call these people who vaccinate our kids and us, to tell us about that. And that's the bit where it goes wrong.
Right. Right. If you are considering vaccination as a practice, I would ask for all information. I'd ask for the package insert. I would ask for the box. I would never make a decision to do something on the spot. So therefore, if I don't want to judge, I don't want to make medical decisions for other families. But if you are on that position, please leave, do your research, and then if you still are deciding that, yeah, vaccination is for me or for my child, go back, do your homework. Do your homework first. Know what you're putting in your body before you put it in your body.
And watch the people's studies on CHD TV. Watch the parents. Listen to the parents that did vaccinate before you. It's not good results.
Right. I mean, one of the things that we found is that if you go to the peer-reviewed literature, Marcia Angel, who used to be the chief editor for the New England Journal of Medicine, said that about 50% of scientific publications were just pure garbage, that they were lies. And so, you need to trust the anecdotes of the parents. Parents are the best experts. They're the ones that are spending 24/7 with their children. And so you need to be able to heed those warnings, because what the pharmaceutical industry, what the university establishments, what established researchers are telling you is not necessarily the truth.
Brian came on Monday to talk about the paper with aluminum. And since then, the Defender put this very, very good article out here. Scientists published map for how aluminum in vaccines can cause brain injury that triggers autism. Suzanne Burdick did a great job on that. So talk us through this article, because it's great, isn't it? It'll be in the show link as well, so you'll be able to pull it up.
Right. Right. The article is a preprint right now. You can go to zenodo.org, and there's the link in the show notes to access the article. But we've looked at aluminum adjuvants that are in the majority of vaccines that children receive in the first 2 years of life. Almost every vaccine contains aluminum adjuvants. Adjuvants basically are supposed to strengthen or magnify the immune response. So therefore, if you present something like diphtheria antigen or diphtheria toxin in the presence of aluminum, then that makes you hyperimmune to diphtheria. The problem is that aluminum adjuvants are very, very destructive to human body, to human tissues. And we've linked aluminum epidemiologically, from a genetic standpoint, from a cell physiology standpoint, from a biochemical pathway standpoint, and even from a legal standpoint, using what's called the Bradford-Hill criteria, showing that yes, in all of these instances, it connects directly and undeniably to autism and autism spectrum disorder. We wanted to put that together as a treatise to show that aluminum in vaccines is extremely problematic. Vaccines can and do cause autism. Heaven help us if you combine vaccines and Tylenol, that's even worse. But Polly, we studied this, and we want to look at what's the worst component of vaccines that is linked to the autism epidemic, and hands down, it was aluminum adjuvants.
And this is huge news. So I thought what I'd do before this show is just Google all the big mainstream news and see where they're breaking this huge news that's really important, because it's affecting killing children. I can't see it anywhere.
No, the news, really, the mainstream media will not touch this. They rely on pharmaceutical advertisements to pay their bills, to keep the lights on. And so therefore, you're not going to see me on the likes of Fox, CNN, MS Now, ABC News, New York Times, whatever. Instead, they're going to poke fun at it and write hit pieces. I'm forever thankful for the outlets that covered it. First and foremost, CHD TV. But I've appeared on 2 different shows on Real America's Voice, also on Alex Newman, Robert Scott Bell, so many other outlets that are interested in this news. That will cover it, that dare cover it, but it's the alternative outlets that will tell you the truth. And again, I'm so thankful for CHD TV for doing this every day.
Well, we're thankful to you for producing the science that everybody needs to hear about. And just before the trolls or whoever it is start to write those horrible comments about, could you just tell us about the qualifications of the people, the authors of that paper?
Well, there is Dr. Chris Shaw, who has been an aluminum expert and has studied aluminum neurotoxicity. He's a neurologist, so he looks at neurotoxicity. He has been doing this for 25 years. Dr. James Neuenschwander, who's a practitioner who has been working with children who have regressed into autism for over 20 years, is the head of the MAP Society that is looking specifically at curing autism and treatment modalities that cure autism. Also, Carl Jablanowski, my senior scientist, a data scientist who looked at the epidemiology. Martha Herbert, MD, PhD, who was a neurologist from Harvard University, now works for a Life University in her retirement. Dr. Clayton Baker, so many others. Heather Ray, and my staff, Marty Roberts, who helped us with being able to ingest all of the articles. We started with about 600 articles when we began this endeavor. We winnowed it down to about 150, 200 articles that directly show the combination of aluminum adjuvants in vaccines leading to autism.
Amazing work from Science Department, headed up by you, Brian. Thank you so much. And this is your show, so you're going to close it out. But do stay tuned, everybody, because we do have a story, a People's Study story after this.
Well, thank you so much, Polly. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this important issue. Read that paper. Everybody can read science. If you don't understand science, email me at info@childrenshealthdefense.org. I will explain it to you personally.
Can you tell us your name, please?
Lorraine.
And this is your brother?
This is my brother, yes.
All right. So did your brother take the COVID-19 shot?
No, he did not. He didn't believe in it.
He just didn't?
No, he felt like it was a bioweapon from the beginning. He just sensed that it was poison.
Okay, so did he have one of those little pulse things on his finger at his home that would measure his oxygen?
Yes.
He did?
Yes.
So is that what made him go into hospital? Did that get low?
No, it never got low. It never got below 90.
So what made him go in?
Because he gets pneumonia every year, and he was having trouble breathing even though he had, the 90th percentile oxygen. He felt the need to go in because he needed antibiotics for his pneumonia.
Okay, so he goes in, and are you communicating with him?
Yes, the whole time.
Because you're not allowed in, right?
No, they didn't allow me in. He went there by ambulance. He had his phone. So I encouraged him to go in because I didn't know what I found out later on then. So he went in. He had kidney issues, so they knew all of that, and basically the remdesivir, he had no fluids. They gave him the COVID cocktail, and I learned later in the medical records a bunch of sedatives and narcotics, including fentanyl, and high oxygen, where he felt like he kept on having to take it off. His oxygen never dipped below 90%. It was always in the 94 and plus percentile. It wasn't until in the middle of the night that they called me and said that they were moving him to a more acute, because he barely got a room like after a day of being in the hospital. So I understand they were packed and everything, but they moved him, and immediately after they moved him, and I say moved because really what they were doing was taking him to go be ventilated without his consent.
And that's what they did, the ventilation?
Yeah. And they didn't tell me, they didn't ask me. They had my phone number. I was supposed to be able to make medical decisions, my sister and I, and they didn't tell either one of us what they were doing. They just moved him And it was only per the hospital records that I could see that he never dropped below the 90th percentile. And he had a previous, he was a victim of a carjacking many years prior, so like in the 90s. So he had on his records at Kaiser ventilation complications. So why they didn't do a trach or something else that they felt that he needed to breathe is beyond me, other than, you know, hospital holocaust. That's what I call it.
Were you with him when he passed?
Was I with him physically? No.
Was anyone?
No. They didn't let us in. We didn't expect for that to happen. And matter of fact, when the doctor called me at 5 or it was like 4 in the morning telling me that they were losing him. They were losing him because they were trying to ventilate, and they were unsuccessful in ventilating and lost him while doing it. So that's what happened.
So then you went in afterwards. You saw him?
I never went in. I couldn't go in. My bigger sister had to do it. I was in shock, in utter shock.
How old was he?
49. Too young. Too young.
What do you want people to learn from you telling this story? What do you want them to know?
Just like many others, he was a victim. He didn't have to die. He had pneumonia. If he had been treated for pneumonia like he got each year, he was susceptible, he would have lived. They didn't give him any medication to treat his pneumonia. They gave the common hospital COVID protocol, which was poison, ultimately shutting down his kidneys, giving him sepsis, and he died of organ failure. But they wanted to call it COVID, and they caused the organ failure.
Do you know if he got abuse for being unvaccinated?
They kept threatening him that they were going to ventilate. So they were making his anxiety. He had PTSD from the carjacking in 93. So they kept on threatening him, saying that they were going to ventilate the whole entire time.
So he had a
and they lost his glasses. He could barely see. He had glasses he wore since a baby, prescription glasses, and they conveniently lost them. So he couldn't see what was going on. He was in a panic state. They kept on giving him sedatives to calm him, which also later on I understood, you know, one of the side effects is lowered breathing. You know, it lowers your breathing rate. So yeah, great job. The hospitals failed my brother and many others. Murdered them when they didn't have to. They could have lived with, given the proper medication, hydrated, fed.
So this is still going on today, as you know.
Yeah.
So is there anything that would make you ever go into hospital?
No, absolutely not. Matter of fact, less than a year later, my husband got really sick with pneumonia. They treated him at home. At one point, his oxygen dropped just a little. And of course, from my PTSD that occurred from this, you know, situation and what I went through with my brother, I could not take my husband to the hospital. I took care of him at home and got him better within a week. Just common cold medications, different herbs and vitamins. I got him well within a week, and he was in pretty bad shape. Again, my husband, he has no previous medical history or health conditions, so I just treated him at home, and he was fine.
What a story, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, it's sad. It's sad. I see all the victims around me, and it just breaks my heart for, you know, the lack of, you know, value on human life. And, you know, I believe in God and I serve a God, and I hope that, you know, we see justice one day in our lifetime. But if not, I know that, you know, that we'll get justice somehow. I know that, like those people that were victims that are posted all around your bus, including my brother and others that I know. Unfortunately, their blood is on their hands.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
And I feel that.
Raymond's.
Yeah, his name is Raymond.
No, I'm sorry that you, I'm sorry you lost your brother.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.